A veteran and his dog saved an old man. Months later, they inherited his diner of grace. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's begin. It was a cold evening in the small, quiet town of Birchwood. The kind of evening where the wind carries a chill that seeps into your bones, and the only sound you hear is the crunch of snow beneath your feet. John, a battle-worn veteran, walked slowly down the empty street with his faithful dog, Ash, by his side. John had seen his share of battles, both on the field and off, and life had not been kind to him in recent years. He had returned from the war, alone, broken in spirit and body. His only companion now was Ash, a loyal German shepherd who had been his partner during his years in the service. Together, they drifted from town to town, looking for some kind of purpose. That evening, as they walked through the snow-covered streets of Birchwood, something was different. There was a sense of tension in the air, as if the town itself was holding its breath. They passed the usual shops, most of them closed for the night, their windows fogged with the heat of the interior. But as they approached the edge of town, they saw it, the faint glow of a single light coming from a small diner at the corner. The sign above the door read, Grace's Diner, a place that had been around for as long as John could remember. He had heard stories about the place, stories of a kind old woman who had run the diner for decades, offering hot meals and warm conversation to anyone who needed it. But tonight, there was something different about it. John didn't know why, but he felt compelled to walk towards the diner. Maybe it was the cold that made him seek warmth, or maybe it was just a feeling in his gut that told him this place, this moment, was important. Ash seemed to sense it too, his ears perked up and his nose twitching as they approached the door. As John reached for the handle, the door creaked open before he could touch it. A voice called out from inside, a soft, elderly voice. "Come in, it's cold out there." John stepped inside, and immediately, the warmth of the diner enveloped him. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air. The old woman, Grace, was sitting at the counter, wiping down a few glasses. She looked up as he entered, her eyes sharp yet kind. "I don't see many strangers around here," she said with a smile. "What brings you to Grace's Diner?" John hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't used to talking to strangers, especially not in such a cozy, intimate setting. But something about Grace's gentle demeanor made him feel at ease. "Just passing through," he said quietly. "Looks like you could use a hot meal." Grace nodded, her smile never fading. "Take a seat. I'll fix you something." As John sat down at the counter, Ash lay down beside him, resting his head on his paws. Grace went to work in the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she prepared a simple meal, soup and fresh bread, the kind of comfort food that only a loving grandmother could make. John watched her move with ease, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. She was a woman of few words, but there was something about her presence that made John feel a sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. As they ate, Grace told him stories of the town, of the people she had known, and of the many struggles she had overcome in her life. John listened, nodding occasionally, but mostly just appreciating the warmth of her company. It was the first time in a long time that he felt like he wasn't alone. But little did he know, this simple act of kindness, this quiet evening spent in the warmth of Grace's Diner, would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. John stayed at Grace's Diner for hours, sipping his coffee and listening to Grace's stories. The warmth of the diner, the soft hum of the old jukebox playing in the corner, and the gentle flicker of the overhead lights made it feel like time had slowed down. He wasn't sure why, but he felt at peace here, as if the weight of the world had temporarily lifted off his shoulders. Grace continued to tell him about the town's history, the people she had known, and the many years she had spent running the diner. It was clear that this place meant more to her than just a business. It was her legacy. As the evening wore on, Grace finally stood up and began clearing the counter. "Well, I suppose it's time to close up for the night," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. John looked at his watch. It was well past midnight. "I should be going," he said, standing up and stretching. Ash, who had been quietly lying by his side, stood up and wagged his tail. Grace smiled. "You're welcome to stay the night if you need to," she offered. "I've got a spare room upstairs. It's nothing fancy, but it'll keep you warm." John hesitated for a moment. He had been moving from place to place for months now, never staying in one spot for too long. But something about Grace's offer felt different, as if this was the place he needed to be, if only for a little while. "I'll take you up on that," he said finally. Grace led him upstairs to a small room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the town. It was simple, but it felt like a safe haven. John thanked Grace and settled into the bed. Ash curled up at his feet, and for the first time in a long while, John fell asleep without worrying about what the next day would bring. The next morning, John woke to the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of Grace humming as she worked in the kitchen. He stretched and sat up, rubbing his eyes. Ash was already awake, his ears perked up at the sound of the coffee pot brewing. He stood up and walked downstairs to join Grace. She was already preparing breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and bacon. "Good morning," she greeted him with a warm smile. "Sleep well?" John nodded. "Best sleep I've had in a while," he said, taking a seat at the counter. Grace set a plate of food in front of him. "Well, I'm glad to hear that," she said. "You've got a good heart, John. I can tell. Not many people would have stopped to help me last night." John smiled faintly. "I guess I'm just used to helping people," he said. "It's what I did in the army." Grace nodded, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I can tell you've seen a lot," she said softly. "I lost my husband many years ago, and I've been running this diner on my own ever since. Sometimes it gets lonely, but I keep going because I know it's what he would have wanted." John could sense that Grace's life had not been easy. He had lost so much during his years in the military, but Grace's story reminded him that everyone carried their own burdens, their own losses. He didn't know why, but he felt a connection to this place, to Grace, and to the legacy of the diner. He had no idea that in the days to come, his life would take a turn that would change everything. Later that morning, after breakfast, Grace walked John around the diner, showing him the small kitchen, the back room where the old jukebox played, and the pantry that was stocked with canned goods and flour. "It's not much, but it's mine," she said with pride. John looked around, taking in the warm, homey atmosphere of the diner. It was clear that Grace had poured her heart and soul into this place. "You've done something special here," he said sincerely. Grace smiled. "Thank you," she said. "But there's one thing I've been meaning to tell you. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think it's time to pass on the torch." John looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. Grace took a deep breath. "I've been running this diner for many years, and I'm getting older. I don't have the strength I used to. I've been thinking about selling it, but I've always been afraid it would end up in the wrong hands. But after last night, after you helped me, I think you're the one who's meant to take over." John was stunned. He hadn't expected this. He had come to Birchwood with no plans, no goals, just a need to escape. And now, here he was, being offered the diner. "I don't know if I'm the right person," he said hesitantly. "I'm just passing through." Grace looked him in the eyes. "You're more than just a passerby, John. You've got a good heart, and this town could use someone like you. I want you to have it, if you'll take it." John didn't know what to say. This was more than he could have ever expected. He had nothing to offer, no experience running a diner, no ties to the town. But there was something about Grace, something about the diner, that made him want to say yes. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Grace nodded, a look of relief on her face. "Take all the time you need," she said. "But I think you'll find it's what you're meant to do." John sat quietly in the diner, the old wooden counter now feeling less like a stranger's place and more like a home. He had spent the last few days thinking about Grace's offer, weighing the responsibility against his own uncertainty. The quiet town of Birchwood had begun to feel like a part of him, and the diner, Grace's legacy, seemed to whisper a calling that he could not ignore. Ash lay at his feet, resting as the soft hum of the morning filled the space. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon was a comfort, but it was the quiet presence of Grace beside him that settled the unease in his chest. "Have you made a decision?" Grace asked, her voice gentle but steady. John looked up, meeting her kind eyes, and he felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. "I've been thinking about it," he replied, his voice low. "I know I don't have much to offer. I'm not sure I'm the man for the job, but—" He paused, his thoughts drifting. Grace smiled softly, wiping her hands on her apron. John, I see something in you. You're more than just passing through. You've already helped this town, helped me more than I can express. She paused, her gaze thoughtful. I've run this place for nearly 40 years, and I think it's time for someone else to take over. I'm not getting any younger, and the diner needs someone who will keep its spirit alive. John's heart beat a little faster. The thought of taking on such a legacy seemed overwhelming. But there was also something undeniable about the pull. He felt toward it. The way the town had welcomed him, how Ash had found his place here, and how he had connected with Grace in such a short time. All of it seemed like signs he couldn't ignore. I'll do it, John said finally, his voice steady. I'll take over the diner. I'll make sure it stays just as it is, for the people of this town and for you. Grace's face lit up with a smile that made her eyes sparkle. You won't regret it, John. I know you won't. Over the next few weeks, John settled into the rhythm of the diner. He found comfort in the routine, the daily preparation of meals, the familiar faces that came through the door, and the quiet moments he spent wiping down the counter, lost in thought. The diner became more than just a business to him. It became his purpose, his way of giving back, of honoring the legacy that Grace had built with so much love. Ash, always by his side, quickly became a favorite among the regulars. The dog's calm presence and loyalty were a perfect match for the diner's warmth and charm. The town slowly began to see John as more than just a newcomer. He was becoming a part of Birchwood, the same way Grace had been for so many years. But one evening, as John was closing up, something unexpected happened. As he wiped down the last of the tables, he heard a soft knock at the door. When he opened it, he was greeted by a man in his late 60s, wearing a weathered coat and a serious expression. You're the new owner? The man asked, his voice rough but not unfriendly. John nodded, unsure of what to expect. I'm Jack, from the bank, the man said, stepping inside. Grace passed on something important before she left. She didn't want me to tell you until now, but I think it's time you knew. John's curiosity piqued. What is it? He asked. Jack reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded envelope. Grace left you a key to something. She wanted you to have it when you were ready. Jack handed over the envelope, and John's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was an old key, tarnished with age, and a note that simply read, for the next chapter. John stared at the key, a sense of unease creeping into his chest. What's this for? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jack shrugged. You'll know when you find it. Grace always knew the right time to pass things on. The weight of the key in John's hand felt like a promise, a challenge he wasn't sure he was ready for. But deep down, he knew it was something he couldn't ignore. As Jack left the diner, John stood there for a long moment, staring at the key. What had Grace left behind for him? And why now, after all this time? The town had given him a second chance, and now, it seemed, it was offering him something even greater, something that would change everything. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and excitement for John. The key that Jack had given him weighed heavily in his pocket, a constant reminder that there was something more to Grace's legacy than he had initially realized. He had been running the diner for almost a month now, and the familiar faces of the regular customers had become his new family. But the mystery of the key kept him up at night. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was leading him somewhere, to something important, but he had no idea where to start. The mornings were busy, the small town of Birchwood relying on the warmth of Grace's diner to get through their days. But the quiet nights were when the key lingered in his thoughts. One evening, as the last customer left and he was locking up, Ash growled softly, his eyes fixed on the back door. John turned, his heart skipping a beat. The diner was always quiet after hours, but tonight there was a sense of tension in the air. What is it, boy? John asked softly. Ash padded toward the back door, his ears pinned back, eyes alert. John walked over, his hand on the key in his pocket, and opened the door. The wind was calm, but the night felt different. As he stepped outside, he noticed something strange, an old wooden shed behind the diner that he hadn't noticed before. The shed was tucked away at the edge of the property, hidden behind overgrown shrubs and thick trees. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time. Yet, something about it called to him. He pulled the key from his pocket and walked towards the shed, Ash by his side. As they approached, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The air felt thick with anticipation. The door of the shed creaked as John turned the handle, the sound echoing in the stillness of the night. It opened with a slight resistance, revealing a dimly lit interior. The space inside was cramped, filled with old boxes and forgotten relics. But in the corner, something caught his eye, an old chest, covered in dust, its metal lock rusted with age. John stepped forward, his pulse quickening. Could this be what the key was for? His hand trembled as he approached the chest. Ash sat beside him, his eyes fixed on the chest as if he, too, could sense the importance of the moment. John bent down and inserted the key into the lock. The metal creaked, and with a satisfying click, the lock gave way. He lifted the lid slowly, revealing what lay inside. The chest was filled with old documents, yellowed papers, maps, and photographs. But at the very top, something caught his eye, a letter, sealed with a wax emblem. He carefully removed it, breaking the seal and unfolding the paper. The letter was dated from decades ago, written in a neat, flowing script. It read, "To the rightful heir of the diner, this place holds more than just the memories of a small town. It is a place of history, a place of legacy, and now it is yours. Take care of it, for it has seen more than you know. The key you hold will unlock the rest of your inheritance. Welcome home." John stared at the letter, his heart pounding in his chest. He had thought Grace's offer was simply a kind gesture, a way to keep the diner in the family. But this letter, it was something more. It was a legacy, a purpose that he had never expected. The words rightful heir echoed in his mind. Was he really meant to take this on? To inherit more than just the diner? He sat back, trying to process everything. This was bigger than he had imagined. The key, the chest, the letter, it all felt like part of a larger story, one that had been unfolding long before he arrived in Birchwood. John stood up, his mind racing. He had never expected this small town, this simple diner, to lead him to something so much bigger. But now, standing in the shed with the key in his hand and the letter in his lap, he knew that this was only the beginning. The diner was more than just a business. It was a gateway to something deeper, something rooted in the history of Birchwood itself. And he was the one who was meant to unlock its secrets. The next morning, John opened the diner as usual. But today, there was a new sense of purpose in his actions. He no longer felt like a drifter, passing through life with no direction. He was the keeper of something far more important. And as he served coffee and breakfast to the regulars, he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. What other secrets did the diner hold? What else was waiting for him to discover? One thing was certain, he was ready to find out. As the days passed, John's mind was filled with the mystery of the letter he had found in the shed. The letter spoke of a legacy, a responsibility that he had never anticipated. He spent the next few days reading and rereading the note, trying to make sense of what it all meant. He couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play, something that had been hidden in the diner for years. The small town of Birchwood, with its quiet streets and familiar faces, now seemed to hold a secret that was slowly revealing itself to him. John couldn't ignore the weight of the key in his pocket, nor the words in the letter. The rightful heir phrase kept echoing in his head. Was he really the one meant to take on this responsibility? Was the diner just a business? Or was it something more, a piece of Birchwood's history that he was meant to preserve? The regulars continued to come in, sitting at their usual spots, chatting about the weather and local gossip. But today, John couldn't shake his sense of curiosity. There was more to Grace's diner than met the eye, and he was determined to uncover it. One morning, as he cleaned the back room of the diner, he noticed something he hadn't seen before, a small, old door hidden behind a stack of crates. It wasn't obvious at first, but as he moved the crates aside, the door became more apparent. It was an old wooden door, the kind that might have been used to store supplies, or perhaps a forgotten storage room. John's heart began to race as he approached it. Could this be another part of the inheritance? He hesitated for a moment, but then, with Ash by his side, he opened the door. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down into a dark basement. The air was damp, and a musty smell filled the space. John hesitated only for a moment before stepping down, the light from above casting long shadows on the stone steps. Ash followed closely, his ears alert, sensing the change in the air. At the bottom of the stairs, John was greeted by a small, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with shelves filled with old, dusty boxes and papers. But it was the center of the room that caught his eye. In the middle of the room was an old chest, covered in layers of dust. It was made of heavy wood, with iron straps along the sides. John approached the chest cautiously, wondering what secrets it might hold. He couldn't help but think back to the letter and the key. Could this be what Grace had intended for him to find? He bent down and carefully lifted the lid. Inside, he found more documents, but this time, they were different. These papers were older, yellowed with age, and written in a script he didn't immediately recognize. As he sifted through them, his heart began to race. Among the papers, he found maps, detailed maps of Birchwood, some showing the town as it had looked decades ago. There were notes scribbled on the edges of the maps, some in a hand that looked familiar, others in a strange, old-fashioned script. The most startling discovery, however, was a small ledger tucked away in the chest. The pages were filled with names and dates, but what caught his attention was the final entry. It read, "For the next owner of the diner, take care of the town, for it is more than just a place. It holds the memories of those who have come before you. Keep the spirit alive." John's hands trembled as he read the words. It felt like a message from the past, from someone who had known the importance of the diner in ways he hadn't yet understood. He couldn't help but wonder if this was why Grace had left the diner to him. It wasn't just about running a business. It was about preserving the legacy of Birchwood itself. As John sat there, surrounded by the relics of Birchwood's history, he realized that the diner was far more than just a place to eat. It was a cornerstone of the town, a link to the past, and now it was his responsibility to protect it. The more he thought about it, the more he understood that this wasn't just a job, it was a calling. The next morning, John made his decision. He would honor the legacy of the diner and the people who had come before him. He would keep the diner running, not just as a business, but as a place that carried the heart of Birchwood. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, he was ready to take on the challenge. With Ash by his side, John knew that he had found his purpose in Birchwood, and as he stood behind the counter, serving coffee to the regulars and chatting with the townspeople, he realized that this was only the beginning of his journey. There was much more to discover, and he was ready to uncover every secret the diner held. John had no idea what the future held, but he could feel the weight of his responsibility with every passing day. The diner had become his life, his purpose, but there was still so much to uncover. The maps, the old ledger, the strange notes in the chest, everything pointed toward something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface of Birchwood itself. He was no longer just the owner of a small diner. He was part of a story that spanned generations. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of a mystery that stretched back decades, and it was only a matter of time before the next piece of the puzzle fell into place. One morning, as John was wiping down the counter, a familiar face walked through the door. It was Jack, the man from the bank who had given him the key. Jack had been in and out of the diner a few times since that first encounter, but today, he looked different, more serious, more intent. John greeted him with a smile. "Morning, Jack. What can I get you today?" Jack sat down at the counter, his expression unreadable. "I need to talk to you, John," he said quietly. "It's about the diner." John's heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" he asked, leaning forward. Jack took a deep breath, his gaze drifting toward the window. "There's something you need to know," he said, his voice low. "Something about the diner and its history. Something that's been kept secret for a long time." John's pulse quickened. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when everything finally made sense. "What do you mean?" John asked. Jack hesitated for a moment before continuing. "You've probably noticed that there's something odd about this town, something that doesn't quite add up. Birchwood is more than just a quiet little place. It's a town with a history, and the diner is a key part of that history. It's been here for decades, and for good reason. The diner isn't just a business. It's a landmark, a place of importance to the people who live here." John sat back in his chair, his mind racing. "So what does that have to do with me?" Jack turned to face him, his eyes serious. "Grace left you the diner for a reason. It's not just about serving food. It's about preserving something important. The diner is connected to the very foundation of Birchwood. It's the heart of this town, and it's your job to protect it." John felt a chill run down his spine. "But why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why did Grace leave it to me?" Jack took another deep breath. "Because you're the one who can see it, who can understand the significance of what's at stake. There's something hidden in this town, John, something that's been buried for a long time. and you're the one who's going to uncover it. John's mind was reeling. What are you talking about? Jack looked around the diner, making sure no one was listening, before leaning in closer. There's an old vault beneath the diner, he said, his voice barely audible. A vault that no one knows about. It's been hidden for years, kept secret by the people who built this town. And it's time for it to be opened. John's heart was racing. A vault? Beneath the diner? He had no idea what Jack was talking about, but something in his gut told him that this was the missing piece, the final clue that would unlock the mystery of Birchwood. How do you know about this? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack's face grew serious. Because I've seen it, he said. I've been involved in this town's history longer than you know, and I've spent years trying to figure out what's hidden here. Now, I believe you're the one who's meant to find it. John sat in stunned silence. He had come to Birchwood to escape his past, to start over. But now, it seemed, his journey was just beginning. The diner, the maps, the key, all of it pointed to something greater, something that would change everything. Where do I start? John asked, his voice shaking. Jack smiled faintly. You've already started, John, he said. The first step is already behind you. The key you have, it's the key to unlocking the past. All you have to do is follow the clues. And when you do, you'll find what's been hidden for so long. Jack stood up, leaving a few dollars on the counter. You're not alone in this, John, he said. I'll help you, but you have to be ready. This town has a lot of secrets, and not all of them are easy to uncover. John watched as Jack walked out of the diner, his mind racing. He had come to Birchwood to find peace, but now he knew that his life was about to change forever. The diner was more than just a place to eat. It was a key to something much bigger, something that had been hidden in the heart of Birchwood for decades. And John was ready to find out what it was. John spent the next few days obsessing over Jack's words, unable to shake the feeling that the diner held more secrets than he could ever have imagined. The mention of a hidden vault beneath the diner felt like the key to unlocking everything. If he could just figure out how to find it. Jack had said that the first step was already behind him, but John still wasn't sure what that meant. The key, the maps, the letter, it all felt connected, but how? Every night, after closing up, he would pore over the maps, retracing every inch of the diner's layout in his mind. He began to suspect that he had missed something, that there was a clue he hadn't noticed before. The next morning, as he was wiping down the counter, a familiar face entered the diner. It was old Tom, the retired veteran who had been coming to the diner for as long as John could remember. Tom had always been a quiet man, but lately, he seemed to have become more reflective, more distant. He sat at his usual spot, ordered his coffee, and looked at John with a knowing expression. You're looking for something, aren't you? Tom asked, his voice low and steady. John froze for a moment. It wasn't a question he had expected. What do you mean? John replied, trying to mask his surprise. Tom took a sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving John's. You've got that look in your eye, the same look I had when I first started looking for answers around here, Tom said. John's heart raced. Answers? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tom nodded slowly. I know you've been going through Grace's old things. You've been digging into the diner's past, trying to figure out what she left behind. And I'm guessing you've come across more than you bargained for. John swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. He had been keeping the search to himself, not wanting to raise any more questions than necessary. But Tom's words were hitting too close to home. How do you know? John asked. Tom smiled faintly. I've been around here a long time, John. I've seen the way things work. The diner isn't just a place to eat. It's always been more than that. It's tied to Birchwood in ways people don't realize. John leaned forward, eager for more. What do you mean? Tom looked around the diner, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. There's an old story about this place, he said. A story about a group of people who built this town and the legacy they left behind. Some of them wanted to keep their secrets hidden. They didn't want anyone to find out what they had done. But over time, those secrets started to come to light, one piece at a time. Grace knew the truth. She was part of that history. John's mind was spinning. What truth? He asked. Tom leaned back in his chair, his expression growing more serious. The diner wasn't just a place where people came to eat. It was a front for something much bigger. A way for certain people to keep their power and their influence over the town. John felt a chill run down his spine. You mean a conspiracy? Tom nodded slowly. Something like that. The diner was built as a place of refuge for those in power, a place where they could control the town without anyone knowing what was really going on. But it's not just about the diner. It's about Birchwood itself. The town has a history that most people don't even know about. John's head was spinning with this new information. He had always known Birchwood was a quiet town, but he had never imagined it held such secrets. So what happened? John asked. Why hasn't anyone talked about this? Tom's eyes grew darker. Some things are better left forgotten, he said. But not everyone wants the truth to stay buried. Some of us remember. Some of us want to see it uncovered. John took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had thought that inheriting the diner was just about keeping a business running. But now, it seemed like it was part of something much bigger. Something dangerous. What do I need to do? John asked. Tom stared at him for a long moment, as if weighing the decision. You need to find the vault, he said finally. The key you have, it's not just for opening doors. It's for unlocking the past. If you're really going to protect this town, you need to uncover the truth. The vault holds the answers. John felt his pulse quicken. Where is it? He asked, his voice urgent. Tom looked at him gravely. I don't know exactly, he said, but I know it's hidden beneath the diner. The vault is deeper than you think, and the more you dig, the more you'll uncover. John stood up, determination filling his chest. He had to find the vault, no matter what it took. For Grace, for Birchwood, and for himself. He had come here to escape his past, but now, it seemed, his past was coming for him. The diner was his responsibility now, and whatever secrets it held, he was ready to face them. The next morning, John woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The conversation with Tom had ignited something inside him. The weight of the responsibility had settled over his shoulders, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a mission to uncover the truth about the diner and the hidden past of Birchwood. He couldn't ignore the vault anymore. It was as if the diner itself was calling him to find it, to unlock its secrets. The key Jack had given him was no longer just a token. It was a key to a deeper understanding of the town's history. As he stood behind the counter, preparing for the day, he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers he sought were right beneath his feet. The regulars came in, chatting among themselves, but John's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the maps, the chest, and Tom's cryptic words. The vault was hidden, and it was time to find it. He couldn't waste any more time. As the last customer left, John closed the diner and walked to the back door. He had a plan now, and it involved more than just searching the floorboards for hidden compartments. He needed to look deeper, beyond the obvious. He needed to find the entrance to the vault. John had lived in Birchwood long enough to know that everything in this town had a story, a history. The diner, the town square, even the trees, they were all connected to something larger, something older. And now, it was his job to uncover it. He stood in the back alley behind the diner, staring at the ground. The building was quiet now, but there was a certain energy in the air, a sense that something was waiting to be discovered. He knelt down, brushing his hand over the cracked concrete. There had to be something here, something that would point him in the right direction. His fingers brushed against something hard and cold, an old metal plate. His heart skipped a beat as he realized that this was no ordinary piece of the floor. This was the start of something. He pulled at the metal plate, and to his surprise, it shifted slightly, revealing a narrow gap beneath. John's pulse quickened. This was it. This was the entrance he had been looking for. He could feel the key in his pocket, as if it were guiding him toward this moment. With a grunt, he managed to pry the metal plate free, exposing a dark, narrow shaft beneath. The air that rushed out was cold, musty, and thick with dust. He shone a flashlight into the hole, revealing a rickety ladder leading down into the darkness. John hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, Ash close behind him. The dog's low growl echoed in the narrow space, and John felt a surge of both excitement and dread. What was he about to uncover? As he descended the ladder, the smell of earth and old wood filled his nostrils. The ground beneath him creaked with every step, as if the entire structure was holding its breath. He reached the bottom and stepped into a dimly lit room, the flashlight revealing the outlines of shelves, crates, and old boxes stacked high along the walls. It was an underground storage room, but it felt more like a forgotten vault, hidden away from the rest of the world. As John moved further into the room, he spotted something strange, a large, ancient-looking chest in the corner. It was similar to the one he had found in the shed, but much larger. The chest was covered in dust and cobwebs, its surface scratched and worn from years of neglect. But it was the metal lock that caught his attention. It was a heavy, intricate lock, unlike anything he had ever seen. He stepped closer, his heart racing, and he could almost hear the echo of Grace's words in his mind. The key you hold will unlock the rest of your inheritance. John reached into his pocket and pulled out the key. It seemed to glow in his hand, as if it were alive with purpose. He slid the key into the lock, and with a satisfying click, the chest opened. Inside, there were more documents, old, fragile papers, neatly stacked and tied together with string. John carefully pulled the top bundle free and began to unfold the pages. What he read next made his breath catch in his throat. The papers detailed the founding of Birchwood, but there was more. Much more. There were names of families who had settled here, families that had helped shape the town's future. But there were also strange symbols, maps, and cryptic notes. Some of the names were familiar, but others were not. And at the very bottom of one page, there was a note written in bold letters. The vault beneath the diner holds the key to the town's future. Only the true heir can unlock its power. John's mind was spinning. What was this vault, and what power was it referring to? The diner, the key, the maps, they were all part of something much larger than he had realized. He felt a sense of urgency building inside him. The secrets of Birchwood were not just about the past, they were about the future. John had been chosen to unlock these secrets, to preserve the town's legacy and its future. But he knew he couldn't do it alone. As he stood there in the dim light, holding the papers, he realized that he had a duty to uncover the truth, to protect the diner, and to honor the memory of Grace and all those who had come before him. This was no longer just about running a diner. It was about protecting a legacy, and he was ready for whatever came next. The days following John's discovery in the basement felt like a blur, the weight of the papers in his hands too much to bear. The chest had revealed more than just old town records. It had exposed a truth he wasn't prepared to face. The mention of the vault beneath the diner, the cryptic symbols, and the idea that the diner held the key to Birchwood's future were all pieces to a puzzle he wasn't sure he could solve. John sat in the diner late one evening, the silence around him almost suffocating. Ash lay by the door, eyes half closed but always alert. The town was quiet as usual, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the refrigerator. John had been poring over the documents for hours, trying to make sense of the strange symbols and notes. Some of the pages seemed to suggest that the diner was more than just a building. It was a place where the town's history, power, and future converged. His fingers traced the maps, the names, the odd drawings. There were references to old legends, rumors of a hidden power beneath the town, and whispers about the diner's role in keeping it safe. But no one had ever spoken of it before. No one had ever hinted that the diner was the key. John's eyes fell on the note that had been written at the bottom of one of the papers. The vault beneath the diner holds the key to the town's future. Only the true heir can unlock its power. The words haunted him. What power could a small diner possibly hold? How could he, someone who had only recently found himself in Birchwood, be the true heir to something so significant? He sat back, rubbing his face with his hands. This wasn't just about running a diner anymore. This was about something far larger. Birchwood's future was somehow tied to the diner, and it was his responsibility to uncover whatever secrets it held. But how? Where did he even begin? As he sat lost in thought, the door to the diner creaked open. John looked up to see a figure standing in the doorway. It was Jack, the man from the bank, the one who had given him the key. Jack stepped inside, his face serious. "I thought you might be here," Jack said, walking over to the counter. "I think it's time we talk." John stood up, his heart racing. "About what?" he asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Jack glanced around the diner, ensuring no one was watching, then leaned in. "You've found the vault, haven't you?" John didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. Jack's words confirmed everything John had been feeling. "I know about the vault," Jack continued. "I also know what it holds. And I know why it's been hidden for so long." John felt a shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean?" Jack paused, his expression grim. Birchwood wasn't always a quiet town. It has a history, one that's been buried for years. There's a reason why this town is so hidden. People who came before us wanted to keep it that way. They wanted the power to stay in certain hands, in the hands of a few. And they hid that power in the vault beneath this diner. John's mind raced. The diner was more than just a place for food. It was a safeguard for something much larger, something the town had been built around. So what's in the vault? John asked. What am I supposed to find? Jack looked him in the eyes, his voice lowering. It's not just what's in the vault, Jack said. It's who has access to it. The diner is the key. Whoever controls the diner controls the town's future. John's stomach twisted. And you think I'm the one meant to control it? Jack nodded. Slowly. You've been chosen, John. Grace left you the diner for a reason. But you need to understand something. There are people who don't want you to find the vault. People who want to keep this power for themselves. If they know you're close to uncovering it, they'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't. John's mind was spinning. So what do I do? He asked. You need to go to the vault, Jack replied. You need to open it. But you have to be careful. There are forces in this town, old powers, that will try to stop you. You can't trust everyone. Jack's words hung in the air. John had already learned that Birchwood was not as simple as it seemed. There was something darker beneath the surface, and now he had to face it. Jack stood up, his face hardening. You're not in this alone, but you have to act fast. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to stop them. John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision. He had no idea what he was getting into, but he couldn't turn back now. The diner, the vault, the power, it was all connected, and it was his responsibility to uncover the truth. Jack left without saying another word, and John sat there for a long time, staring at the empty diner. The answers were down there, hidden beneath the floorboards, in the vault, and it was time to find them. With Ash by his side, John knew he had to face whatever came next. There was no turning back. The next few days felt like a whirlwind for John. Every moment was consumed with thoughts of the vault, the diner, and the legacy that now weighed on his shoulders. Jack's words echoed in his mind, urging him to act quickly, to uncover the power that lay hidden beneath the diner. Yet, as much as he tried to focus, there was a growing sense of unease, a feeling that something was closing in on him, something he couldn't quite grasp. The town, which had once seemed like a peaceful refuge, now felt like a place full of secrets, secrets that had been buried for far too long. John had never felt more alone, and yet, he wasn't sure who he could trust. Grace had left him the diner, and now it was his responsibility to protect it, to unlock the truth. But the longer he waited, the more dangerous it felt. The more he learned, the more he realized how little he truly understood about the diner and the power it contained. With Ash by his side, John had spent countless hours searching every inch of the diner, looking for any clue that would lead him to the vault. Yet, despite his best efforts, it seemed like the answers were always just out of reach. One evening, as the sun set and the last customers trickled out, John was cleaning the counter when he heard a soft knock at the door. He looked up, expecting it to be a late straggler, but instead, he found himself staring at a familiar face, Tom. The old man had been a regular at the diner for years, but tonight, he looked different. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced with a sense of urgency. Tom stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room before settling on John. I need to talk to you, Tom said, his voice low. John's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the usual friendly conversation that Tom had always struck up. There was something in his tone that made John's stomach tighten. What's going on? John asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Tom looked around once more, as if making sure no one was listening. I know you've been looking into things, he said. I know about the vault, and I know you've got the key. John froze. He hadn't told anyone about the key, at least not directly. How could Tom know? How do you know about that? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tom's eyes were grave, and his voice dropped even lower. There are things in this town, things that go back long before any of us were here, he said. Grace knew more than she ever let on. She left the diner to you for a reason, John. You're the one who's supposed to uncover the truth. John's mind raced. Was this a warning? A plea for help? Or was Tom simply trying to manipulate him? But there was no time to second-guess himself. The mystery of the diner, the vault, the power, it was all leading him somewhere. What do I need to do? John asked, his voice steady now, even if his heart was pounding. Tom stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. You need to go to the town library. There's a hidden room there, a place no one knows about. It's been locked away for years, but the key you have will open it. Inside, you'll find the answers you've been looking for. But you have to be careful. There are people in this town who will do anything to stop you from uncovering the truth. You're not just dealing with a forgotten past. You're dealing with forces that want to keep the town under their control. John's mind was reeling. A hidden room in the library? What did it have to do with the diner? And who were these forces Tom spoke of? Why haven't you told anyone else? John asked, his voice full of suspicion. Tom sighed deeply. I've spent my whole life watching, listening, trying to piece together the truth. Some things are better left buried, but you're not like the others. You've got the strength to handle what's coming. But I can't do it for you. John stood there for a moment, processing everything Tom had said. There were too many questions, too many unknowns. But one thing was clear. The answers he was looking for weren't at the diner. They were elsewhere. He had to go to the library. He had to uncover whatever secrets were hidden there. The next morning, after closing the diner, John made his way to the town library. The building was old, its stone facade worn by years of weathering. It was the kind of place that felt timeless, as if it had been standing long before anyone in Birchwood could remember. He pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside, the familiar scent of old books greeting him. The library was empty, the only sound the soft creaking of the wooden floors beneath his feet. John made his way to the back of the building, where the shelves grew taller and the aisles narrower. He had been here before, many times, but today it felt different. Today, the library was no longer just a place to read. It was a key to unlocking everything. As he reached the back corner of the library, he noticed something strange. A bookshelf that seemed out of place. It was slightly ajar, as if someone had moved it recently. John's heart raced as he pushed the shelf aside, revealing a narrow door hidden behind it. He took a deep breath and inserted the key into the lock. With a soft click, the door swung open. Beyond it lay a dark, narrow room. The air was thick with dust, but John could feel that he was standing on the precipice of something monumental. He stepped inside, and as he did, he knew that this was the beginning of the end. The answers he sought were just ahead, and nothing would be the same once he uncovered them. As John stepped through the narrow door, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on his chest. The room beyond was dark, dust hanging in the air like a forgotten memory. The smell of old paper, wood, and time itself filled his nostrils. This place, hidden behind the library's shelves, felt like it hadn't been touched in decades. But John knew this was where the answers were waiting. He carefully fumbled for the flashlight in his pocket, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing old shelves stacked high with more books, yellowed papers, and strange artifacts. The room was much larger than he expected, and despite its obvious age, it seemed untouched by time. The floor creaked under his weight as he stepped further into the space. Ash, his ever-loyal companion, followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the shadows as if aware that something significant was unfolding. John's flashlight flickered as he moved further into the room. The light bounced off a worn desk in the corner, covered in papers and ledgers. The desk itself looked ancient, its surface scarred by years of use. Behind it, a large, ornate mirror hung crookedly on the wall, the glass cloudy with age. But it wasn't the mirror that caught John's attention. It was the desk. Something about the way the papers were scattered, deliberately or by accident, caught his eye. He approached cautiously, the dust shifting under his feet as he reached for the topmost pile. As he lifted the first stack of papers, a thick leather-bound journal slid out from beneath them. It was old, with a cracked cover and a faint, almost unrecognizable insignia etched into the front. John's heart pounded as he opened it. The pages were filled with detailed notes, records of town meetings, and personal accounts. But one entry stood out. It was written in bold, black ink, and it seemed to leap off the page as John read it aloud. The vault will remain locked until the rightful heir returns. The diner is the key. The power of the town rests with those who control it. John's breath caught in his throat. He could feel the weight of the words settle deep into his chest. This was the truth, the very essence of Birchwood's history, hidden for so long. The vault beneath the diner wasn't just a place to store things. It was a source of power, a center for the town's future. But the more John read, the more questions he had. Who had written this? Who were the rightful heirs? And how did this all connect to the diner? The answers were just out of reach. But the journal didn't stop there. The next page contained a map, one that seemed to chart the town's layout, but with certain locations marked in red ink. The diner was at the center of it all, But there were other places too, places that John had never heard of. Each marked spot seemed to pulse with significance. The library, the old mill, the church on the hill, and even the river that ran through town. What did these places have to do with the diner? And why were they all connected? John's mind raced as he turned the pages, trying to make sense of the symbols and markings. As he continued, a piece of paper slipped from the journal and fluttered to the floor. It was another letter, written in the same neat script as the journal. John picked it up, his hands trembling. The letter read, "The key lies within the town's heart. Only when the town is united can the vault be opened. Protect the diner, for it is the heart of Birchwood." John's head was spinning. What did this mean? The diner was at the center of the town's power, but how could it be the heart of Birchwood if it was so hidden, so isolated? The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the diner wasn't just a business. It was a symbol, a place where the past, present, and future of Birchwood collided. He was the key holder now, the one who had to unlock the secrets that had been kept for generations. But with that knowledge came an undeniable weight. If Birchwood's future depended on him, he couldn't afford to fail. But there were still so many unknowns. The letter, the journal, the map, all of it pointed to something far larger than John had ever anticipated. The vault beneath the diner wasn't just a storage space for the town's history. It was something more. It was a power that had been hidden, guarded, and now it was his responsibility to uncover it. As John stared at the journal and the map, he realized that the final piece of the puzzle was within his reach. The diner was not just a place to eat. It was a place of power, a place that could shape the future of Birchwood. But to unlock that future, John had to go deeper, past the walls of the diner, past the history, and into the very heart of the town. He couldn't do it alone, though. He would need help, people he could trust. And as he looked down at Ash, the loyal dog who had been by his side from the beginning, John knew that the journey was just beginning. The vault was waiting, and it was time to unlock the power hidden beneath the diner. The discovery of the journal and its cryptic messages was only the beginning. John had been walking through Birchwood, piecing together its past, and every step was pulling him deeper into the mystery. The key, the map, the vault beneath the diner, all of it was interwoven into something far larger than he had imagined. The town was holding secrets that had been buried for generations, and John now realized that he wasn't just the keeper of the diner. He was the keeper of Birchwood's fate. As he sat in the back room of the diner, the journal spread before him, Ash lying silently at his feet. John knew that the vault was the key to understanding the town's hidden past. But how could he unlock it? The map seemed to be pointing him towards several key locations around town, but it didn't make sense. The library, the old mill, the river, it was as if Birchwood itself was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Each location had a red mark on the map, but there were no clear instructions on how to proceed. He stared at the map for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of the scattered clues. It wasn't just about finding the vault, it was about understanding what was hidden inside and why it was so important. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the diner, a knock echoed at the door. It was Tom again, the old man who had first warned John about the dangers lurking beneath the surface of Birchwood. He entered slowly, his eyes filled with the same intensity they had held when they first spoke. "I see you found the journal," Tom said, his voice quiet but urgent. "That's a good start." John nodded. "I've been looking through it. The map, the vault beneath the diner, but I don't understand. What does it all mean? Why is this town so tied to the diner?" Tom closed the door behind him, walking over to the counter and sitting down. "The diner is more than just a building, John. It's the town's foundation. The people who built Birchwood knew that they needed a place to hide something powerful. The vault was designed to keep it safe, to keep it hidden, and the diner was built to protect it." John felt a chill run down his spine. "Protect it from what?" he asked. "From those who would use its power for their own gain," Tom replied. "Birchwood's power is tied to something ancient, something that's been here long before the first settlers arrived. The diner was built on top of it, and over the years, it's been watched over by people who knew what lay beneath." John was silent, processing everything Tom had said. The town, the diner, the vault. It all made sense now, but it was more than he was ready to face. "So what now?" John asked, looking up from the journal. "What am I supposed to do?" Tom looked at him with a serious expression. "You need to find the vault, John. and you need to open it before it's too late. There are people in this town, people who have been waiting for this moment. They know what you found, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure it stays buried. John's heart raced. What people? Who are they? Tom's eyes darkened. There's a group, a secret faction that's been controlling Birchwood for years. They've known about the power beneath the diner, and they've made sure no one else could access it. But now that you've found the key, they won't let you get any closer. You need to act fast. John's mind was racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A secret faction in Birchwood? People who had been hiding the truth for years? It was hard to fathom, but the evidence was all around him. The diner, the map, the journal, it was all connected. So what's in the vault? John asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. That's what you need to find out, Tom said, leaning forward. The vault holds the key to Birchwood's future. Whatever's inside is the reason the town has been kept in the dark for so long. And if the wrong people get their hands on it, everything will change. John took a deep breath, standing up. He had no choice. He had to find the vault and uncover what lay inside before it was too late. The diner wasn't just a business. It was the heart of Birchwood, and he was the one who had to protect it. Tom stood as well, nodding. You've got the key, John. But be careful. The closer you get to the truth, the more dangerous it will become. John didn't say anything. He just nodded, determination filling his chest. He had come to Birchwood to start over, to escape his past. But now he knew that his past had led him here for a reason. The diner was the key to everything, and he couldn't let anyone take it from him. The future of Birchwood rested in his hands. As he walked out of the diner, Ash at his side, John knew that the journey ahead would be the most challenging one of his life. But he was ready. He had no choice but to face whatever lay ahead. The vault was waiting, and John was going to unlock it. John stood outside the diner, the weight of everything bearing down on him. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows over the streets of Birchwood. The air was cool, but there was a warmth in the breeze that felt oddly comforting. Ash, as always, stood by his side, sensing the tension in the air. John's hand rested on the key in his pocket. The vault, the diner, the hidden power, it all seemed like a distant dream, something he never imagined would become his reality. But now, with Tom's words echoing in his mind, he knew that he was no longer just a man running a diner. He was a man on a mission to uncover Birchwood's secrets and protect the future of the town. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. The vault beneath the diner held the answers. John had to open it, no matter what it took. He took a deep breath and made his way toward the diner's back door. As he stepped inside, the familiar scent of coffee and baked goods filled the air. The diner was quiet now, but there was an underlying energy in the space, a sense that something monumental was about to unfold. John walked past the counter, the place where he had spent so many hours, and headed to the back room. His heart raced as he approached the trapdoor in the floor. He had opened it before, but now, it felt different. The key in his pocket seemed to pulse with purpose. He knelt down and carefully inserted the key into the lock, turning it with a satisfying click. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing the dark, narrow shaft leading down to the vault. Ash growled softly beside him, his eyes fixed on the darkness below. John hesitated for only a moment before climbing down the ladder, the cold air from below rushing up to meet him. The beam of his flashlight flickered as he descended, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The room below was just as he remembered it, dusty, dimly lit, filled with forgotten relics of the past. But today, the space felt different. Today, it felt like the threshold of something greater. As he stepped onto the floor, the weight of the moment settled over him. This was it. This was the place where everything would change. John walked toward the far wall, where the large, ornate chest sat, waiting. The same chest that had been there all this time, holding the secrets of Birchwood's past. He reached for the lid, but before he could open it, he heard a sound, footsteps behind him. He spun around, his heart racing, but there was no one there. Only the silence of the room, the dust floating in the air. Was he imagining things? He turned back to the chest, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. The chest was calling to him, and he couldn't afford to waste any more time. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid. Inside, the chest was filled with more documents, old and brittle, their edges frayed from years of neglect. But it wasn't the papers that caught his attention. It was a small, leather-bound book at the very top. He reached for it, pulling it out carefully. The cover was worn, the lettering faded, but it was unmistakable. The book was important. He opened it, and the first page read, "For the one who holds the key. The diner is the heart of Birchwood. Protect it, for its power is yours to wield." John's breath caught in his throat. The words felt like a command, like a weight he couldn't ignore. The diner was more than just a place to eat. It was the town's lifeblood, its power, its future. And now, it was in his hands. As he flipped through the pages, he found more writings, accounts of the town's founding, of secret meetings, of a pact made long ago to keep the power of Birchwood hidden. The diner had been the center of it all, a place where decisions were made, where the town's fate was sealed. John understood now. He was not just a caretaker of the diner. He was the guardian of Birchwood's future. The power was his to control. But with that power came great responsibility. He couldn't do this alone. He had to protect the diner, the town, from those who would seek to misuse its power. But there were others in Birchwood who knew about the vault, about the diner's true purpose. And they wouldn't let it go without a fight. John stood there in the dim light, the weight of the book in his hands, knowing that the real journey was just beginning. The secrets of the diner, of Birchwood, were finally within his reach. But the true test had yet to come. The forces that had kept this town hidden, this power buried, would not give up easily. But John was ready. The vault had been opened, the power revealed, and now he had to decide what to do with it. He looked down at Ash, his loyal companion, knowing that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The diner, the heart of Birchwood, was now his responsibility, and he would do whatever it took to protect it.